Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 313. My name is Brando. Our guest co host for today, you see his smiling face with his amazing Thin Lizzy hat. Does anybody else own a Thin Lizzy hat but our friend Matthew Wake from AL.com and all these other rock publications? What's going on, Matt?
Yo, Brando, good to see you, man. Thanks for having me.
I feel like you're borderline rock star. You got Marshall amps behind you, you got guitars behind you. I mean, you're my co-host. I mean, I will interview you later again. We're going to talk about, after our interview with Phil Lewis, who is the marquee name for today of LA Guns. LA Guns is a new album coming out, Checkered Past, on November 12th on Frontiers Music. So we're going to talk to Phil, but after that, we're going to talk to you because you're the rock star of the journalist world. You just interviewed Zach Wilde. A lot of stuff to speak with you about, but I'm sorry, we got to get the Phil first. I hope you understand.
Yeah, you're too kind, and I appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
Right on. So I think I see Phil popping in the participants page as we continue to do some episodes on Zoom. If you all want to watch this on YouTube or continue to listen to the audio version of the podcast wherever you listen. So let me just get Phil in here. And now we welcome in Phil Lewis, who it seems like you're in like Dracula's Dracula's library, or is that your library behind you?
That's right. The 12th century Dracula's library, and I'm not sure what's behind it. Probably a couple of cats. But yeah, it's great.
And as we welcome in Phil Lewis from LA Guns, two things. And I'll be honest with you. I had no idea that was a sheet of books behind you. I really thought that was your library.
I know, it's great. Yeah, look, it wobbles.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Well, we'll see if one of your cats pops out. One of mine, Matt Wake, also has cats. We'll see where this conversation goes. But obviously, leading the first things first. Congratulations on the upcoming, record that's set to be released, Checkered Past. How long did you guys work on this? How long was this last record to now?
A good solid year, I'd say. And we did the first track very quickly. Now, this is a very different record than anything we ever did. Just in the way we went about recording it. Traditionally, when a band records an album, they all get together in a room, they huddle, they work out, huddle and cuddle, and work things out. Tweak songs, make adjustments here and there, and then they play the fuck out of it. They just keep going and play it so many times that you can play it in your sleep, and that's a traditional way of doing it. This was very different because we knew that, because of the pandemic, we're going to be, everyone was going to have to record remotely at their own place. So, for vocalists, it's not that difficult. You need a sort of decent mic, an interface, and a laptop. And swear to God, for the vocals, that's all there is. There are no compressors or fancy EQs or expensive preamps. I mean, it really is sort of entry-level stuff. We weren't sure how that was all going to work out, because Tracii was sending stuff over from Denmark, and I had my stuff here in Vegas, and we were sending our files to Adam Hamilton in LA, in Los Angeles, and he was compiling it and putting it together, and actually he ended up playing drums on it. So this is Adam Hamilton that was in the band as a bass player for something like 3 or 4 years, who's just always been a satellite of the band. He's come back recently and played a bit of rhythm guitar for a few shows. And because he was involved, he's always been involved with production. And he happens to have his drums all set up, and it's a great setup. We had no choice. We had to use, but it was apparent that we would, it would be crazy if we didn't use Adam, because he's a brilliant drummer. and he had the whole setup ready to go. So that's the thing, you know, and so does this blueprint work? And so we tested a song, and that was I'm Gonna Let You Down. And it turned out really good, you know, all things considered, you know, with our file exchanging and recording at home remotely, and that's the psychology of that as well, you know. It's very different for me as a singer, you know, not being in a vocal booth in a studio with my buddies, and you know, there's guys working the faders, and it was just me. And so it was. I had to be. Well, I had the cat. I had my Tommy was my cheerleader, chair thief. So yeah, it was a very solitary affair record. It was strange, you know, to do something, and then instead of the usual, oh, that was great, you'd have to wait a bit. You'd have to wait, like, you know, hours, a couple of days or whatever, and before it was all compiled and dropped in the track. And as I said, you know, the proof of concept was Let You Down, and we just, that was it. That was the beginning, and that was when we started recording in earnest. Right after that, once we realized that, you know, we had the setup, and we could.
And I was going to ask about that. A lot of bands and artists now, especially since the pandemic, are recording separately, sending each other files. But you just mentioned Tracii's in Denmark while you're in Vegas. I mean, the time difference alone, let alone the distance. I mean, you're right. So I was going to ask, I guess you kind of answered it. If you laid down a vocal track, would you hear from Tracii the next day? Was there any sort of immediate response? Did that get frustrating at all? Or it just was what it was?
You know, unless there was something very specific, you know, it was just like, you know, we're working on a chorus, and it's like, do you like this version or do you like that version? No, for the most part, it was like everybody did their part. You know, Tracii wrote this stuff like almost 2 years ago. You know, he knocked it out in a few weeks. You know, we were contracted to do a record, and he sits down and he comes up with 11 musical ideas, song structures, and then he's done. It's like, all right, my job's done. You know, I'm come back to me when it's all recorded, and I'll put some lead solos on it. And he pretty much leaves us to it. So yeah, sometimes it might be a couple of days before I hear back, but you know, I'm always going along like, no news is good news. If I don't hear anything, then yeah, because you know, we've gotten beyond, you know, patting each other on the back. We don't stroke each other anymore. We don't need to. It'd be weird if we did. He does his job, he does it well, and I do mine, and I'd like to think I do too.
And I think you're going to fulfill the expectations, the high expectations for this new record, because, and Matt, you can jump in here. I mean, Matt tweets all the time about how awesome the new LA Guns has been, and how your last several records have just been incredible. Like, you know, better than some of your older work. So, I mean, Matt, I don't, do you want to jump in here and just talk about the recent LA Guns?
There's two LA Guns, Mark 1 and Mark 2, and Mark 2. This is the current manifestation, has been together for a little over 5 years now, and that was, you know, what we consider a reunion. Tracii and I had a long time apart. We didn't speak to each other, something like 15 years. So when he came back, when we started working, when we sort of buried the hatchet and got back to working together, we both developed a lot as musicians and recording artists, and writers too, of course. And we still have, you know, the boyish enthusiasm that we did back in the good old dirty days. But we wanted something a little better, something a little more challenging. Nobody wants to hear a guy in his 60s saying he's a sex gun lover in the heat of the night. Don't run for cover, because I got you in my sight. That was then. That was Mark One. That was a great time. That was the boy band. That's when we were young, dumb, and full of cum. And it just it was a party band. You know, it was frivolous. It was great. This new version is very different. I mean, you know, the personnel is the same, but it just developed so much, and not everyone likes it. You know, some people are just like, well, you know, where's the fun? You know, where's the? It's not sleazy anymore, and you know that there is a, you know, it's a small amount, but there is certainly, you know, one can't help but notice that, you know, not everybody's thrilled with it, but I am.
I'm thrilled with it too. And Phil, you and Tracii might have not talked for 15 years, but you're talking on this record together, brother. And I think the music's fun because the songs and the music are so kick-ass. Like That Ain't Why, Better Than You. Like, why do you think you and your voice, the way you hit it vocally, and Tracii's riffs, the way he brings what he does on the guitar, why do you think that they fit so good on songs like that, or even going back to like Rip and Tear or Electric Gypsy? But man, you know, on this new stuff, I don't know, it just fits good. It, you know, rocks like a mother.
Great, thank you. You know, there's something about partnership, certain partnership. You know, Mick Jagger has it with Keith Richards. Roger Daltrey has it with Pete Townsend. Steven Tyler, Joe Perry. That's me and Tracii. We're our muse. We're Cain and Abel. That's what we call ourselves. And I've worked with hundreds of guitar players and good ones, really good ones, and you know, come away learning a lot. But nobody's ever made me work as hard. You know, when I'm working with Tracii, when we're in the studio or on stage or in rehearsal, I'm on my best game. I'm on my best behavior because, you know, he's giving me the best that he's got. He never mails it in. He's not half-assed about anything. So, you know, a lot of the time it's just, you know, fun, rock and roll, you know, jamming with the mates. It's never like that with Tracii. It's serious work. We got some serious work to do and no fucking around. And that's just the nature of the way we've always worked. And I like to think that he's given me the very best of himself, because he's certainly getting the best out of me, the best that I've got. And because of that, I find myself, I push myself out of my comfort zones to do stuff and interesting stuff that I might not have done. But as far as this record goes, there was, if you listen to the voice in it, you know, I'm using a lot more lower. I'm singing a lot more in the lower register than I have done in certainly the Mark I version, the original band, because it's just more appropriate. You know, I can do it. I mean, and there's plenty of evidence of it, but I tend to save it, you know, just choruses and use it more as an effect than just come out the gate screaming. I think that's something that it's been interesting for me to do, you know, work on my voice, as an instrument since the reunion. And you know, when you're recording and when you're recording in isolation and remotely, you can. It's interesting, you know. If you can, there's no one there. Just me. I can experiment as much as I want, and that's what I did on this record. So yeah, you know, like if you like my voice, if you like what I've done with it in the past, I think you'll like it even more because it's definitely got. I think it's got a newer dimension. It's something different. Something gets a little bit better with each of these records, each of these reunion records. And you know, boyish enthusiasm. You know, I'm guilty of that, but I honestly think this is the best thing we've ever done. And I know you can look up interviews. And Phil, you've said this 5 times, but it's true. I really do feel that I'm excited about it, and already the response, you know, the people that heard it, it's just been like overwhelmingly enthusiastic, and you can't buy that.
You should feel that way every single time. That's what you strive for. This is the best that I've ever done. And
I think so. I think so too. You know, because I'm often, you know, criticized for saying that. If you know, like I'm trying to like spiff it up or something, but it is true, and it's certainly true with all of these 3 reunions, post-reunion releases, because they're great, and yeah, I know the sleaze factor isn't quite as prevalent, but you know, it's plenty funny. You know, it's not. We're not. You know, we're not trying to be Iron Maiden here. You know, we've definitely retained our humor.
and a perfect example of that. Let me see. Can you see my background now?
I do. I see in the overalls.
So yeah, you have a fun Dexy's Midnight Runners kind of vibe in the new video.
You know, people say Dexy's Midnight Runners. Do you realize that was 50 years ago, and yet somehow that imagery has sustained half a century.
Right.
And it's like, you know, the reason I'm wearing that because I'm making a point. I'm dressing down because, well, you saw the Cannonball video, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Pirate.
Yeah. So over the top, you know, with the pirates and the wigs and the jackets and the swords. That's such a busy video. I wanted this next one to be chill and not focus on me, but focus on the actors and the storyline. And I'm really putting on the brakes, pulling on the reins, and just trying to be. That was about. I would have done it naked if I could. I just, you know, I was just wanted to just strip it down after the pirate caper.
I gotcha. And I mean, chances are you probably are naked underneath those overalls. Nothing.
But absolutely, as you can see. It's funny. Look, on that side too. There's no tattoos. All my tattoos are on the right, okay. And there it is on the left. It's like all virgin skin. Ah.
See, it is great. Even though there's a lot of new music is more serious, but I mean, the first thing I noticed when I'm watching the video was audibly how clear and concise your vocals are. And then just how Tracii hasn't lost a step. So, I mean, it really is, I think, is a blessing for music fans that I know human things happen. We all get in fights with family, with friends, bands, obviously, but
you know, like we're brothers. It's a brotherly thing, you know. You know, we're both only children, and we sort of adopted each other as our soul brothers 35 years ago. And I don't have that connection with anyone, and I know he doesn't either. So it's yeah, I'm glad we did. I'm glad we buried it. And it's funny, you know, after all that time apart, it really didn't take us long to get right back up to speed. And I was like, we were both like, what was the problem, you know? And it just seemed so trivial. And 15 years. Such a long time. So, you know, in many ways, I think we both feel, you know, we've got to make up for lost time. And we certainly have, you know, we've been banging them out every 2 years. And they sound good.
Yeah, and that video that Brando and you were talking about, Phil, for Get Along, it's a really strong song, and it hits that spot that I kind of call the mid-tempo ballad, almost kind of like It's Over Now from from the Hollywood Vampires thing. Can you maybe talk about how each of those songs came together? It's Over Now, the classic, and the new single Get Along, which they don't sound alike, but they're both in that mid-tempo ballad.
That mid-tempo and acoustic, featuring acoustic. Well, I'd like, since you bring it up, It's Over Now has been added into our set. That we'll get back on the road in November. And we've never done it. I mean, we may have done it a couple of times live, but it's never been a part of our set. And I think because of this Get Along, I don't know, maybe it subconsciously it triggered me to think, Tracii, we've never done it, and people are always asking for it. Let's try it. Let's see what it sounds like. So I'll let you know, because it's a song we haven't done. It's funny because we've never done Get Along. We've never done Cannibal. None of these songs on this record we've done live. That's not true. There's one. We did Let You Down. We were doing a live stream after we recorded it. And it's the only thing off the album that we played live. And we nailed it, and it was great. But it's really strange, because it's not the traditional way of doing it. By the time you record, as I was saying earlier when I started, you've sung a song 100 times before you record it. I've never sung these songs. I mean, I've sung them 100 times here. I've never sung them with a band. So isn't that strange? That's really weird. But anyway. What I thought when I first heard it, Get Along, it reminded me of something off of the Led Zeppelin 3 record, with the, that record for me was when the guys did a kind of a rock folk fusion. And in many ways, like that Ballad of Jane, it's fair to say that might be a rock country hybrid, because mixing those two, but yeah, this is definitely a new direction musically, in a folky direction, and it almost sounds, the beginning part sounds like mandolins, but it's not. It's actually Tracii playing 12-string high up the neck, and it just sounds beautiful, and it's just got this freshness to it, and it's just like you almost expect Sandy Denny to come in on the choruses, like something from Led Zeppelin 3. And here's another song, that there's no belting in it at all. It's just like mid octave, mid range singing, and enjoyable. I mean, I can do it on my head. I could do that every night for a year. It's easy, but it's got personality, and you can hear the words, which is quite unusual these days. And the words are good. It's an inspirational song about, when things haven't worked out, and you move along, just get on with it, get along with it, and like when one door closes, another one opens, and that's the message in that song.
Fantastic.
Right on. Matt, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, if you don't mind. And speaking of your vocals, I was fortunate enough to see LA Guns on the last tour. You came through here in Alabama, and the band just sounded incredible. They played the tertiary market I'm in like it was Madison Square Garden, and I always liked LA Guns before then, but I loved you guys after that. And and your vocals sounded incredible. Tracii was amazing, whole band, Ace, everybody. But it also made me do some digging on you, and going back and finding the records by your band Girl with Phil Collin, who went on to Def Leppard. The Sheer Greed album is just so cool and fantastic. And I'm curious, what do you think? It has that cover of Do You Love Me by Kiss on there, and
Right.
Hollywood Tees, which LA Guns covered on the first LA Guns album. But to me, I wanted to know on Girl, what do you think made what was special about working with Phil Collin on guitar? Because you've worked with Tracii, he's so great. And also, what do you think kept Girl from maybe making it from beyond cult favorite to like where you guys eventually went?
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, if people don't know, Girl was the first band that I put together in my career back in 1980, like the early days of the decade.
Wow, he's holding up the record right now.
It was a sort of a glam punk London band. We weren't very good. It was just something we just liked to do. It was kind of a hobby. It was like, literally was like Nirvana, where, we went into a rehearsal room and we started smashing chords, music out and calling them songs, and they were terrible. But gradually over a while, it started to take shape and we got a vibe going. And it was a bit of a little phenomenon in London at that time. There was kind of a sort of a cool sort of a glam rock movement. There was a band called Japan who were a huge influence on it. And one thing led to another, and before we knew it, we had a record deal, and all of a sudden we were a real band, and we really didn't know much about being in a band. Jerry Laffey and I formed it, and we needed another guitar player. So we put an ad in Melody Maker, the weekly rag in London, looking for a peroxide guitarist. And Phil Collin gave us a ring. He was like, "Oh, I'm Phil. I play guitar, and I like the look of your ad. Let's get together." And he came over, and he just blew us away because, we weren't that good, and he'd been like doing his exercises since he was about 14. So it was just, he was phenomenally overqualified for what we were doing, but he wanted to do it, and he was up for getting involved, and we started writing. Him and I wrote Hollywood Tees because like Jerry, because everything else we did was all kind of chug. It was all chug kind of stuff. And Phil came along. He just turbocharged it. And yeah, so we were just on the scene around. We were signed to Jet Records, which was Don Arden's, Sharon, Ozzy Osbourne's wife's dad, and Ozzy was just left Black Sabbath. He was just sitting himself over his first solo record, like asking anyone to come and listen to it and asking if it was any good. He was very insecure about it. And it was an exciting time. It was great. Band didn't last for long. We were done by 1982. And Bon, that was it. And when it was over, it was over. It was fine. I moved on. I was doing other stuff. But the albums were never released in the States. But somehow they infiltrated over, and it was that Girl stuff that got Tracii interested in me and my voice. And when I came over from London to Hollywood, I was like amazed how many people knew it, because it had been 10 years prior, and I didn't think that anybody had heard of it, because it was never released outside of the UK and Japan. But yeah, it was like you get bands like Iron Maiden and Def Leppard. They have a legacy. If they were one of my fine books, there'd be a 5 leather-bound collection. Girl was a 2-page poem. and that's all it should have been. That's all. If Girl had, oh my God, if it hit it as big as Def Leppard or Iron Maiden, I'd be livid. I never want that, and it wasn't supposed to. That wasn't the plan. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that the tentacles of influence worked their way across the Atlantic and infiltrated the colonies. It was a very, very pleasant surprise.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That is fascinating, and I didn't know it. That's why I had Matt be my co-host. I was like, I had no idea about your history, and
Yeah,
that thought process to beginnings, and to what you were talking about before, how you and Tracii are, you're meant for each other, like Joe Perry and Steven Tyler.
yeah,
Well, if
yeah.
you noticed the name of this podcast, Appetite for Distortion. So
No,
another duo that finally also got reunited, much longer than 15 years.
exactly. Yeah, fantastic too. And I think it's great. I'm real happy to see that. The world's happy to see that. I hope they do some new music. I think that that's a very bonding process. When you work on a song and it turns out great, you feel good about that, and you feel good with the partners you collaborated. Guys, I've got to go. I'm on half-hour schedules, and I've got somebody on the other line waiting for me right now.
You got it, buddy.
So, nice talking to you. Appreciate the
talk to you
support.
again. You
Come
got
see
it.
us live, right, mate? Thank you.
Bye-bye. Totally lost track of time. Because I know you kept asking all these amazing questions about LA Guns, and we just got to the Guns N' Roses stuff, which is what this podcast is. Totally lost track of time, so that's my fault. I'm sure we'll be able to get Phil on again because I wanted his perspective of that time period, but we just got lost in talking about LA Guns and Def Leppard, but that's okay, I think.
Yeah, and well, he had a nugget too about new music, making that together. What a bonding experience it sounds like it's been for him and Tracii, and saying how he was psyched like everybody else was that Guns was back together. And that was an interesting point that obviously they bonded. GNR has on playing these huge successful tour shows and concerts, stadiums, but that was interesting to think of, like making something new together is a kind of a cool bond too. So that was a neat point he had, I thought.
It's a good segue to what we were talking about off the air, and we were talking about on Twitter. And again, these are the questions I guess I'll have to save for Phil Lewis part 2. My fault. I'm the producer and host, and I completely lost track of time. Is that recent interview with Slash? Obviously not with me, because I don't know if I'll ever interview. I hope one day we'll see. But he did a recent interview with Odyssey, the radio company. What was it? It used to be Intercom. Just change the name, so it's Odyssey. So it's a real interview. And he talks about new Guns N' Roses. And I did this. I spoke about this on a new episode with Peter Napoliello, who was the senior VP of promotions at Geffen during that time. And just he knows about promotions, what they should do. And what upset me at the time, and I'm just curious about it. I'm not angry about it. I'm just more maybe confused. But when it's like Slash is like, we have really yet to be in earnest to like sit in a room and create and write together. We're working on stuff that has been around, and I'm like, to me that doesn't bother me. That's not the point, because Axl brought November Rain and Don't Cry to Slash. I mean, that's just how it doesn't bother me when a song was written, or when part of it comes together, how it comes together. That's a whole separate discussion. But Matt, if you remember last year, this will be your segue. You said we were talking before Phil joined. You're like, that was so off brand for you. You're always so happy, and like you seem so angry when you were tweeting. I'm paraphrasing what you were saying. But last year, Slash said he has done some writing with Axl and Duff. It wasn't much of anything. It was just saying they're working on stuff. So it's like a year later, and it could be the phrasing, his awkward phrasing maybe. They haven't done anything other than just, Axl's like, here's silkworms. What do you guys want to do with it? That's what it seems like, as opposed to sitting down. He made it seem like they were sitting down last year, and maybe that's my fault for living in Fantasyland. So it just threw me off, and I just got upset. I had to vent a little bit. So, how do you feel about it? And I was going to ask Phil, because if he wants, LA Guns could have been a legacy act. I mean, maybe the other version almost is kind of. No, Steve Riley was very nice on this show, but still, I mean, you need to have the singer and the guitarist from the band. I'm sorry for it to be a LA Guns. That's just, otherwise you're Bobby Blotzer's Rat, and that's not Rat. You can do whatever you want, but I could, whatever. I wasn't going to say that to he was a nice guy. I'm not going to say these things to his face. He knows the deal. So anyway, that's why I was just frustrated. You see bands like LA Guns, and other acts, they can easily put out music, but it seems so hard for GNR, and they don't tell you what's going on. So, sorry, you got me worked up again with that. So go ahead, Matt. What's your thought? Your thoughts?
Okay, it might be a kind of a thing where the wording is maybe doesn't match up with the act. Like maybe say, when he had stated he had been working on with Axl or Duff on stuff, maybe they were sending files back and forth, stuff like that. And where he's saying, now he's saying we haven't been in a room together and working on stuff. Maybe just like, and I think you mentioned this earlier, maybe just the wording doesn't quite line up to the intent, and this is all cursory on my part, but I will tell you, man, that LA Guns stuff is strong, like, and it sounds like LA Guns, like, and bands like them and the AC/DC record they put out last year, it's like, particularly, I mean, it's like there's been a step up of some of these bands that have these long, big legacies and brands, and GNR, if they do a full album, I mean, there are some other people doing really strong work, and it would stick out a lot if it was like, I'm not going to name any names of, very famous bands who latter day period, they put out an album and there's 2 good songs and the rest is, that band by numbers kind of.
Right.
It'll stick out. So they better bring it if they do one, is all I'm saying.
I'm sure they all know that, but there's a lot of ways to look at it. They know they don't need to reinvent the wheel. They can keep doing what they're doing to make it sound like Guns N' Roses, but that's never been Guns N' Roses. The sound from Use Your Illusion, from Appetite, different than obviously Chinese Democracy, very different. And their quote unquote comeback single was Absurd, which was extremely abrasive and lyrics about pussy full of maggots, which I have to like kind of swallow before I say it because I don't feel very comfortable. Earmuffs, kids. I mean, children listening to this. And, it's, if you weren't aware of Chinese Democracy or Down on the Farm, their cover, you would have been like, which a lot of people were, what the hell is this? But they didn't care. Hard School comes out. Really, I mean, I think most people loved it. There are those uber GNR nerds that like, oh, I liked the original version, the demo version best, the leaked version. I've learned not to really get obsessed with leaked versions beforehand since Chinese Democracy, because I thought we would never get it. It's because that's just not the way it was meant to be released. It's just seeing like a version of a book or a movie come out. And you know what? Maybe after the fact they want to, these were the deleted scenes. These were tracks left. I mean, that's up to the artist. So I'm not going to get too nitpicky there. But Hard School sounded like Guns N' Roses. So it's just, you want communication, and I think that's the issue. Like if Guns N' Roses said, like I think Kiss has said, or Poison has said, who wants new music from us? And they go out, they tour, it's successful. That's fine. Maybe you and I would love new, Talk Dirty to Me Part 2, right? But the masses, sure. And I get it. And even when you go to a GNR show, you have somebody like me waiting for Absurd or Hard School or something like Use Your Illusion. I'm telling you, 80, if not 90% of the crowd, when Sweet Child of Mine is played, freak out. When Welcome to the Jungle, freak out. Knocking on Heaven's Door and Live and Let Die. 2 songs I personally don't need anymore. They freak out. So GNR does not need to do anything at all. They don't need to make new music. So it was just troubling to hear that after Hard School comes out and Absurd comes out, and he talks about that a little bit, almost as if they were throwaways, being like, yeah, he had these songs, lying around and Duff and I put our spin on it. And that's what made me like Silkworm. So whatever they did to it made me like Absurd. So I think it's great, obviously. But just again, picking his words, I know he's not a politician, but just my guttural reaction. And I even tweeted, you saw that. I'm not going to turn full heel. I need to take a breath. I was like, we just saw an article. They took in $50 million last year. I think I'm still bitter about buying that $100 sweatshirt, which I don't need. I think I've worn once. I don't need it. Why did I buy it?
Because you freaking love Guns N' Roses is why you bought it.
No, I do. I know. And then nothing about my affinity for the band changed from Slash's, and I'm not going to take it too seriously. I mean, I took it as seriously as somebody with a GNR podcast should take it. It didn't ruin my day. I was just like, really? I want them to be friends. I think more than anything else, more than new music, I want to know Axl and Slash hung out together and watched Squid Game together or something, or they went to, Taco Bell. They did something together as friends. Because when we heard Phil talk about now his friendship with Tracii, I mean, that's great for both of them as people to move on. So to not be the non-selfish reasons, but as fans, selfishly, to know that they're not just doing it for the money. They're up there with love for each other, what they do, and the fandom. And it seems that way with Guns N' Roses. It does, the way they are on stage, Axl smiling. It was just that comment, even though I got a lot of responses saying, I'm surprised this caught you off guard. It caught me off guard. So that was me acting caught off guard.
Well, it's interesting, and even Lies. So remember, such a dichotomy to the Brutal Appetite, the acoustic side of Lies. So they're always changing, but at the center of it, you have these. And what I think is really striking, the last few, this LA Guns record is very good. The last few have been very good. And like also little things like the way Phil, I mean, it still sounds like Phil, and you don't notice, he's trying to sound way lower, but he picks his spots on the sizzle, the screaming kind of stuff. And challenging thing I put it in an article the other day talking about singers, there's not a lot of slam dunk contests for former NBA players in their 60s. Okay. Similarly, hard rock, not the most forgiving for a lot of vocals, whereas like Mick Jagger was always in the mid range and he still sounds like Mick Jagger. But it's interesting how well, I mean, Phil doesn't sound like he's lost a step, but to me, and I guess that's a scenic route I get into. They're making these strong records. I mean, now granted, Phil and Tracii are very talented, the people they have working with them, even Adam Hamilton, the producer, very talented. But I mean, Axl and Slash and Duff are very talented too. And I think they could come up with something, new stuff that was very strong. And I guess that is the thing that all of us ties into what you were saying about, oh man, I hated to hear they hadn't been in a room yet making new music, because they're so talented, man. Like if everyone's trying to bring their best and not playing hide and go seek from what they're best at, you can try new stuff, but don't play hide and go seek from what you're best at. A favorite band of mine, the Black Crowes, did that for a long time. You're great at bluesy rock and roll, and then you spend like 6 years trying to be the freaking Grateful Dead and Allman Brothers. But like the new gun stuff, as talented as those guys have, as much they've learned, it would be strong. And I guess that's kind of the thing that we're like, oh man, we'd love to hear that those three, talents busting off each other.
And it doesn't have to be a Chinese democracy situation where it needs to have all this extra flair to it, where it's going to take time. why not put out a Lies version, an acoustic version? That's why Wichita Lineman, I hope, is on a new record. I would have hoped, I would have liked for that to have been on this Hard School EP.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that'd be cool.
It would have been. I think it's great because when you see that element on stage where it's broken down, it's acoustic. Axel is singing in his pocket. You can't judge him on those low register songs. Like you used a good analogy with slam dunk contests. I say that all the time with sports. You're not going to see Mark McGuire hit home runs anymore. I mean, maybe not necessarily because of steroids, but I mean, he's old. You know what I mean? Derek Jeter's not coming back anytime soon. But you still love these guys. And the difference with athletes, they are on a team that has to perform up to a certain level to win. And that's what they're all, it's their whole livelihood is made upon. With bands, it's your band, you're performing. There's no unless you're a music critic, you're just there to be entertained. You're not there to be, it's not American Idol to be judged or anything, but that Axel can still do it. He can still do it. And especially that what could be easy, you would think, as somebody who doesn't make music, so what do I know? But to do an acoustic record, why blow them away with Chinese Democracy 2 or Use Your Illusion 3? Why not do similarly what Doug Goldstein said that it was his idea with GNR Lies? Do some new acoustic songs and then do some live tracks. And bam, you got a holdover until the next album. So it's one of those, like all these great ideas. I'm just like, why is nothing happening? And I'm still bitter about when Hard School came out, why they didn't have a whole back to school special about it. They could have done, I still want a Hard School Trapper Keeper. Although I guess if you buy the sticker, you can put it on your old school folders, but still.
That's great.
But all things considered, and the conversations on social media, I kept them focused, but some people might just see it at a glance. And, I'm not an unhappy GNR fan, considering where we used to be. I'm somebody who never thought I would see them on stage together, Axel and Slash, ever. So I'm happy. I hope it keeps going. And I know the band who I'm asking when I ask this, can you just let us in a little bit? Can you tell us a little bit what's going on? Can you just, it's just so sparing and leaves all of this room up for interpretation and our imaginations going wild. And, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to get emotional when I don't have to get emotional. It's just, there's no communication or enough communication, I think. But that's Guns N' Roses. And that's why I do a podcast about it, I guess.
Well, it gives us stuff to think and talk. And, Guns N' Roses is one of those bands, right, that they're just fun to think about and talk about because the personalities and the story and the talent and how they've, their music has, been a big part of our lives and really cool. But I will say that a couple of bands that I wonder if they've noticed it really worked for them, like that became hermetically sealed, like AC/DC, Van Halen, hermetically sealed. They don't let a lot out either, and they hadn't in a long time really, except when, hey, here's the new song, here's the new tour, and while it's frustrating for those fans, we kind of like, okay, that's the way shit is with Van Halen. That's the way shit is with AC/DC. And I wonder if they're just going to go that route because, those were pretty long-term, thinking of Van Halen, bringing Roth and the brothers back together. That worked out longer than people thought it would, them coming back. So, but yeah, man, I'd love to, it'd be awesome to know what's going on behind the curtain. What's next? I can't wait for what's next. Hope there's a next.
There's at least going to be a next because our friends overseas are finally going to experience Guns N' Roses because all those dates that were canceled last year and with traveling restrictions. So they're continuing, and I would like to think as they're continue, if I use a terrible phrase, that we will see more. We just don't know when. And that's fine. And Slash did allude to that there's more, I guess, when we do not know there's more unreleased Chinese material based upon what leaked, and just to see what's to come from that. I guess it was just I took it almost personally, which I know I shouldn't. That's why I'm in therapy. That they just haven't been in a room and like jamming out together, and it's just you want that if it's possible. And I know even back in the day it wasn't like that, but I don't know. Today it's a different GNR. It's a different Axel. Axel's on time. He's smiling. So maybe this Axel wants to hang out with the band. Who knows? So I think that was just more about my fairy tale GNR book that I have in my brain. But
Hey, speaking of books and what's next, that's fascinating that it was Doug's idea to do the acoustic stuff for Lies, which I love that record. And I love that aspect of Lies. And I'm psyched for what happens with the book you're working on with Doug, because one, Doug, in my interactions with him, super nice, super cool guy. And you're the guy to help him tell that story. So I'm psyched to read those stories, brother, when you do them.
it's it's interesting. I talked about this a little bit with our friend Greg Renoff, who's written some Van Halen books, and I have very small experience with a journalism major. I had a self-published book about Cape Cod that I helped somebody write, but nothing of this magnitude. And it is overwhelming, but it's got to be done. Just think about what I do with this podcast, and all I really got to do is transcribe and shape it with him, and it's fascinating. The only thing that kind of and I'll cross that bridge. Again, I'm in therapy, so I'm not going to think about too much that could potentially go wrong. But like with the delays with Matt Sorum's book, and you hear about I think it took Susan Holmes McKagan, albeit her book was fiction based upon some nonfiction, but it said it took her 9 years. I mean, not that this is going to take us 9 years, but it's just like, okay, just chip away piece by piece, and it's fun. Just when I go to sit down and transcribe or edit a conversation we had, I smile. I'm like, this is a great story. This is just cool as hell. I can't wait for people to read this. So I mean, the goal, we'll see what happens. Hopefully my therapist, speaking of which, she gave me a rough draft goal of January 1st. We'll see if we get there. My therapist said that. She's like, you got to give yourself a time to do this. And Doug wants to do a book tour when GNR are on tour. So
wow,
we'll see if
amazing.
We'll see if that happens. But you, I know, have deadlines all the time. Thankfully, I have a loose deadline. So you've interviewed somebody who I've tried to get on the podcast. I'm still trying to. We'll see if it happens. I mean, this podcast continues to surprise me. Zakk Wylde. So can you tell me, because Doug talks about Zakk Wylde in the book. I will say this, because Doug managed him for a little bit during that Pride and Glory days.
Wow.
And what's going to be interesting about Doug's book is, there'll be GNR stories, but in the approach he takes, which I think why we get along, is that he apologizes to people in it, about stuff that he kind of regrets, which isn't like a ton of the book. He tells things about like things that are misconceptions about what went down with Guns N' Roses, or things that he was never given credit to, credit for. But there are plenty of people and things that he apologizes for, and one of them is Zakk Wylde. And then he talks about bringing Zakk Wylde in and / that whole interaction not working out. So I'm curious, I haven't read your article yet. I haven't read your interview yet. Did you get any of that out of Zakk? Because I know you talked some GNR with him.
I did, I guess I didn't dig into, what the vibe was as guitar, coexisting guitar gods with Slash when he was kind of in the orbit of Guns N' Roses about, 94, 95, 93, whatever it was, I forget. But I had looked at an old Kerrang article where he said that they'd written, about 3 pieces of music and jammed for a week or two, whatever he said. And I asked him the vibe of that material, and he said he turned one of those songs into the Black Label Society Rose Petaled Garden, which I went and listened to it. And I've just, recently gotten into Black Label Society. I always loved Zack's playing with Ozzy, but the Black Label Society stuff is badass. It sounds like Sabbath meets the Allman Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the accurate
Um,
description. Yeah.
um, and that song Rose Petal Garden, you're like, wow, I can totally see that post Illusions tour Guns. This is what that would have sounded like. And he said other songs were like that. Um, we kind of hit it and quit it there, but he didn't. That's about the extent of it. But God, fascinating to think of what that would have. Those two just powerhouse league players together like that.
It would have been, and that's sometimes the challenges I find is, if Zach Wild's people might think I'm going to have him on here to talk about Guns N' Roses for half an hour. Well, here's a good example, everyone. I had the guy from LA Guns on. I think I only talked to him about Guns N' Roses the last 30 seconds because I forgot because I'm so focused on what they have to talk about. So that's what it would be like with Zach Wild or any other artist. But I'm just trying not to give too many spoilers. I think some have already been said, but Slash is just not. He's the lead guy. He can collaborate. With the best of them. You could tell that him and Richard Fortas have a great rapport on stage. But I think just to have two guys, that's not what he wants or wanted. And that would have been really I don't know if because DJ Ashba has said he was invited to the reunion, which I don't want to believe that, to be honest with you. I'm like, I guess that would be so weird. You have DJ Ashba in his Nightmare Before Christmas top hat, and then next to Slash in his regular top hat on stage. It would have looked like a carnival. So I'm glad that didn't happen. But again, he's a lead guitar player. So would he played lead with Slash? That's just a weird thing. But I don't know that era. And I tell Doug, we got to get the most out of that era that we can, that you remember, because that's what hasn't been spoken about enough. We all know about the coming up, the 80s, but which we still speak about. But yeah, those quiet years when he's trying to bring in, Dave Navarro and trying to make it happen. And obviously he didn't make it happen, which he admits to. He's like, I didn't make it happen. And I'll give this spoiler. He's like, Team Brazil made it happen. So they did something I couldn't do. So it's hard. I want to talk about this book, and I just spoke with Doug the other day about chapters and everything. And yeah, it's fun. I can't wait for it to get it out. I'm glad you're able to get out your stuff in more timely fashion. See, I would be losing my mind if I was like you. Every article would need to be perfect, and I hit the deadline. I'm like, no, I got to do this better. I can do this better. Well, hopefully, I'm not like that with the book. Doug will be like, it's good. Let's go. Let's bring it to the publishers. Let's go. So I'll keep everyone abreast of that situation. And I'll keep everyone abreast if Phil Lewis comes back on again. I'm going to reach out and say, hey, can we bring him back on for part 2? Didn't get to talk any GNR because I was so enthralled with that girl story. And that was a perfect, whatever. And now I'm hating on myself. This is what happens when I'm writing a book. Instead of me talking you through on a microphone, I'm sitting at my laptop being like, no, this is stupid.
Yeah, that would be because it would be, LA Guns played the Cat House opening night with Guns N' Roses also. And I think maybe, Faster, Pussycat, and Jet Boy. So memories of that. Any kind of camaraderie, competition, we don't have to, people know the history and all that stuff. So it would be interesting to hear his take on that.
Next time, you know what? Now that I got all the LA Gun stuff out of the way, it's gonna be all GNR next time. That's what it's gonna be. And you know what? I'll tell you, Matt. I think why I'm so, because I told you off the air. I was like, did I tell Matt to join the conversation at the right time? Because I spoke with David Coverdale this morning, and it was like, it just threw me. When I do like multiple interviews, I did David. You'll laugh at this since you're a cat guy like Phil Lewis. I did my interview with David Coverdale. Left my apartment to go get my cat allergy shot. It's because I'm allergic to cats, and I have 3 of them, and they all sleep on my face when I go. Then I came back here, so I was just all disoriented. And next thing I know, half an hour. He's like, "Oh, I gotta go. Sorry." I keep apologizing for this. I'm annoyed at myself, man. But you know what though? You're here. You helped fill out this episode with your knowledge. So thank you.
Oh man, it was a pleasure. Thanks for thinking of me. And like I said, LA Guns always liked them, but after seeing how good they were live and how they brought it, where I live isn't New York or Los Angeles. It's not a major market. They brought it, dude, and I've been a huge fan ever since. Liked them before, but huge fan now.
Very cool. And hopefully, I'll ask you back on again if we get Tracii. I'm still trying for Tracii Guns. So, maybe this was a happy accident that I can show LA Guns management that I can just talk nothing but LA Guns. And then Tracii will see that. And like, oh, he's not going to ask me about the 2 months I was with Guns N' Roses in 1985 or half an hour. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, is he annoyed, still being asked, oh, you're the Guns and Guns N' Roses, for all these years? Because he's obviously been in LA Guns. That's his band. So we'll see. My goal was to try to get Phil and Tracii on at the same time, just a little behind the scenes. So maybe that'll be next time. Who knows? Who knows what the hell is going on in this podcast? The fact that it keeps continuing and everyone keeps digging it. Oh, and that reminds me, something you told me off the air. I have to give a shout out to a listener that you met, a listener of mine. So tell me say what you said off the air. It was a cool story.
Yeah, so where I live in Alabama, it's Huntsville, Alabama, which is near Muscle Shoals. Huntsville is actually now the most populous city in Alabama, eclipsing Birmingham. But Enough's Enough, known for songs like The New Thing and Fly High Michelle, played a show here with Anthony Quarter from Tora Tora opening up on acoustic. Both great. And was hanging out with Enough's Enough's drummer and bassist, talking after the show. Talked to Chip before the show, the main guy in Enough's Enough now. But long-haired young guy comes up and he's kind of talking to the band, and he'd seen their previous show here in town a couple of years prior, and they were talking about that and with introductions and he let me know he's in a band, and he was like, telling me the band, and I was like, oh yeah, I've seen the name, I've listened to some of the stuff on Spotify, and it's solid. He's like, oh, and I'm like, Matt Wake, and what do you do? All that stuff. He's like, oh yeah, man, I saw you on Brando's podcast, and this is in North Alabama, and young rock and roller, long blonde haired rock and roller, watching Brando's Appetite for Distortion. And from that, he then saw my name and would see my name on articles and would read them. But man, that's pretty cool reach. And I guess that's kind of cool to hear every once in a while that you're the reach that it gets, the tentacles, as Phil Lewis would say.
No, it does make me feel good. And I think we figured it out before the interview that it's Mason Frost, right? And he has a band out. And Mason, I just recognize the name because he's been a follower on social media for quite some time and has asked some great questions to some of the rock stars. When I get questions from listeners and I ask the rock stars, Mason has been that guy for quite a while. And it is very cool. I'm here in my apartment in Queens right now, or even when I was doing this in a radio studio, you really just think you're talking to, I don't even know. Like, that's just the way I've always been with radio. Even when I'm on FM, I feel like nobody's listening. It's just always it's so hard with a podcast. It's not like if I'm on Q1043 and that has, a wattage and a fan base of decades. This is just a random Guns N' Roses podcast that started, 5 years ago. And I think Mason's one of the first people that found it. And to know that it's Alabama, it's different countries, it's Canada, it's Spain, Portugal, all these wonderful things. Shout out to Anna from Portugal. She was a listener, early episodes, and she would actually send us audio questions. And that's something that you can always do, by the way, to any listener. If you have a question you wanted to ask Phil Lewis or any future guests, I can read it, or you can record it and I'll play it for them. Kind of like a live kind of caller situation. I'm getting off the phone. What is that? As my fiance shows up. Oh, you got, what did she buy me? Oh, this is candy corn, pumpkin candy corn. Mm-hmm. This ties into everything together, because I tweeted this the other day. We talk about my Twitter. I'm a fan of candy corn, Creed, and Chinese democracy. Come at me, bro. I like things that are maybe not that popular. But it is it just continues to be wonderful to talk to people from around the globe, and then yourself included, man. I mean, we know each other from a hole in the wall, and I appreciate what you do as somebody who studied broadcast journalism, so I respect what you do, I admire what you do, but the fact that you've been on a bunch of times, we still we'll talk as friends, on social media. So this has been a nice blessing, as I keep saying that. This
Oh yeah, man, it's
podcast.
good being buddies with you, and thank you, Guns N' Roses.
Thank you, Guns N' Roses. Even though you're frustrating at times, we love you regardless. So, what is to come on the Appetite for Distortion program? Well, Matt will be on again at some point. Well, we'll see, because he's always been. Oh, any articles you have coming out? I know you have the Zach Wild one out now.
Got a cool one coming out with Spin soon on fill-in musicians like Steve Jordan for the Stones. Talked to a few people, well-known people who filled in with big, huge bands. One in particular that will be of interest to people on your podcast. Talked to Matt Sorum about filling in with Motorhead.
Did
Yeah, and he was very, so he didn't get asked about that all the time. It's not like I'm not like the 9,000th person to go, what's Axel really like?
Right.
So he was great source, super nice, and great storyteller. Also talked with Vicky Peterson of the Bengals, who filled in with the Go-Go's for a tour in the mid-90s, and Mr. Steve Brown of Trickster, who's filled in with Def Leppard. And Steve, if you've never talked to him, holy shit, what a nice guy.
Huh.
And great storyteller. And he was very good friends with Edward Van Halen, so he has some great Ed stories. And there's a Ed little nugget in this story too. But so that's coming. The long-awaited Vito Bratta Guitar World interview is going to come out next year, tied in with the anniversary of the Pride record. And besides the Nothing But a Good Time book, it has been a long time since interview with Mr. Bratta with a media outlet has come out. So excited about that, finally getting out there, and have another thing coming with Spin that I don't want to let the cat out of the bag yet. And one more, something with UCR, Ultimate Classic Rock, that's Guns N' Roses, that I don't want to let the cat out of the bag yet.
Okay, wow, man, you are awesome. I definitely, you're an inspiration, because it's such a hard field to get into what you're doing, and I knew that early on. That's why I was like, let me try two hard fields: journalism and radio, and see what fails first.
What else? Something coming up. Recently talked with Jeff Pilson from Dawkin and Foreigner, and some other stuff's for my staff job here at al.com, which in the three biggest newspapers in Alabama, Huntsville Times, Birmingham News, and Mobile Press Register. So some more cool rock star stuff with that too.
Sweet.
Interviews, rock star interviews. Not that what I do is rock star, but I talk to them.
Journalist rock star stuff. I don't know. You're Tom Brokaw with a leather jacket. That's how.
Yeah. I wish I had his paycheck.
Yeah. Don't we all? Very cool. So be sure to, if you're not already, follow Matthew B. Wake on Twitter for all his upcoming awesome interviews. And same thing with us. Follow us on Twitter, on our new Twitter at the AFD Podcast, for all of our upcoming interviews. What is to come here on this 6 degrees of GNR bacon bar mitzvah party of a broadcast? Well, again, follow. So when are you going to see the next episode? In the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, you'll see it, I don't know if soon is the word,